Welcome to the Fantasy Football 2014 Draft Order Show, brought to you by the MFL. Losers not permitted. Fantex, turning losers into winners by cheating. And by Guinness Stout. Good things come to those who wait.
Alright, welcome into the FFN studio headquarters. I'm Dick Trickle, along with Coach Jordan Dewing, our champion, Jordan Dewing. Now, how does that sound with champion in front of your name?
Well, my mom always told me I've been a champion all my life, so it's about time that people recognize the champion I really am.
Excellent, excellent. Well, alright. This is the 2014 Draft Order Show, where every coach in the league is going to learn where their team is going to select this upcoming season. But before we get to that, I have a few questions for our defending Super Bowl champion. In 2013, Jordan, you accomplished a feat that many people in the league, people that have been around, coaches have been around for a while, have not. The Sean Glazes, the Dave Venables, the Brian Stevens, if you will. They've not been able to do. I mean, you went and you won the Super Bowl. And how does it feel to be on top of that mountain, so to speak? And then what kind of advice can you give to these other coaches who have not yet reached the pinnacle?
Yeah, Dick, that's a great point here. It really comes down to the draft. This is a very important part of your season. It's where you set the backbone for your team and where you make the decisions that are going to either help you or haunt you for the entire season. You need to draft smart and you need to draft well from the top. You can't throw away picks in the 12th, 13th, and 14th round just because you're tired. It's an exhausting 4 hours of draft time, and you got to stay mentally focused that entire time if you want a good team. So some of these players, these Sean Glazes and these Brian Stevens and these Dave Venables, I think they lose their focus at kind of in those middle to late rounds.
I mean, that was something you got a lot from Commissioner Mike Dixon once upon a time. I think it was last year in the press had said that Jordan Dewing is a guy that loses focus in the late rounds of the draft. Yet last year, I mean, you got some great picks late in the draft. Where you're looking at Phillip Rivers, you got late in the draft, top 10 quarterback. You got to keep Andrew Luck. You got Golden Tate. I mean, even Jared Cook. What do you have to say to your critics about not having that focus for yourself?
Yeah, this is all a mind game. I try to throw the other coaches off by thinking that I'm not paying attention or that I'm zoning out, but I'm watching every move that's being made in those late rounds, and I'm taking the best player that's left on the draft board at those times.
All right, well, last year one of the big things that changed in the league was the fact that we had 2 expansion teams. So we moved from 10 coaches to 12 coaches in the league. You were probably at the forefront, at the opposition. You weren't in favor of these 2 teams that are in the league. And in regards to the draft, you had always said that whoever picks 11th and 12th had no shot at going to the Super Bowl. Now, Jordan, last year you picked 11th. Now, knowing that heading into last year's draft and with what you put into the press, you basically said you had no shot at winning the Super Bowl, yet you did win the Super Bowl. Would you like to amend anything that you said last year in the press regarding the 11th or 12th position?
Thanks, Dick, I would. My statements to the press concerning the 11th and 12th pick were I was expecting the previous coaches drafting 1 through 10 to draft good players. So if they drafted the players they should have in those early positions, that would leave no good players at that late position, especially in those first 2 rounds where it's so critical. Luckily for myself, personally, winning the Super Bowl, I had people taking the Doug Martins and the Marshawn Lynches and the Ray Rices in the top 10 picks. So if we're going to have coaches that don't do their research beforehand and come in and make those guys top 10 picks, I think the people in the 11th and 12th round can win year after year.
Well said. Well said, Coach Dewing. And finally, though, before we get to where everybody's wanting us to go, which is figuring out the draft order, I need to ask you, of course, where is your ideal position? Last year, Coach Bill Waddell said, of course, he wanted number 1. He had his man crush on Drew Brees, and he ended up getting the first pick. And the year before, the commissioner, after he won a Super Bowl, he wanted the first pick. He ended up getting the first pick. You kind of came out in the news with your conspiracy theories that the first pick, that it was rigged somehow for Super Bowl champions to get the first pick. Where would you like to pick? And is there any kind of conspiracy going on here with you and those envelopes and getting that first overall pick?
Well, as you see this year, we have sealed envelopes by J.C. Watterson Price that came in and ensured that we'd have a fair. This is the same company that does the Emmys and the Grammys.
And the Academy Awards.
And the Academy Awards, the Oscars. So, that being said, we are secure in knowing that this is a legitimate pick. With that being said, where would I like to be? You know what? I don't need to be in any specific position to put together another Super Bowl winning team. I would like to have a top 10 pick, a top 3 pick, get one of those great quarterbacks. But look at my keeper, Phillip Rivers. People that, they always talk bad about Rivers, crybaby Rivers. What was he? Where was he? Do you remember? Top 10 quarterback this year?
Certainly was.
Why do I need to worry about the Peyton Mannings and the Drew Breeses and the Tom Bradys when I already have a top 10 quarterback on my board?
All right, well, sounds like you're set up good for this 2014 draft. Let's get on to it then. Let's figure out who is selecting number 12 overall in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft.
In position number 12 is an ugly one. This is Brian Stevens, Chupacabra of Terror.
All right, Brian Stevens. Last year, he selected 7th overall. Now, he went with a running back last year, Doug Martin. And in 2 years previous, if you want to pull up his draft history right here, you can see Doug Martin, 2013, Arian Foster, 2012, LaShawn McCoy, 2011. Even 2009, Chris Johnson. He's always been a running back heavy drafter and a coach and building his franchise. Do you think the number 12 position fares well for Brian Stevens and his Chupacabra Terror if they're looking for a running back there?
I think this is a great position for Brian Stevens to be in, considering his previous draft choices. Yes and no. The yes is, if he wants to continue to draft running backs, the number 12 position, he'll have 2 great running backs on the turn. Or he can try to put a winning team together and draft something other than Doug Martin in the first round. So with that being said, if he wants running backs, yes, he should be happy. He'll grab 2 running backs, 2 probably pretty good running backs at 12 and 13. If he wants to put together a winning team, he needs to look at some other positions.
All right, and you make a good point, Coach Dewing. You think about it, the people available there, that turnaround, you're going to be looking at Matt Fortes, you're going to be looking at Eddie Lacy's, you're going to be looking at that type, and you're right, he could go running back heavy right there. Now, there is a rule change this year in the lineups that we can use. Now you can start a lineup with only 1 running back. But if Brian does want to do that, that is certainly an option. Where else do you think he might be going there if you say he wants to win or should want to win? Where do you think he should go instead of running back?
I think he should look at a number 1 tight end, and there are a lot of great tight ends that are going to be in this draft this year. Gronkowski came back from that injury with a great year. We have, obviously, my mind's failing on me, but we have some great tight ends.
Jason Witten's
another one.
Vernon Davis is another one that will be out there.
We also have some of those top number 1 wide receivers that always seem to put up good points. The NFL has really moved into a running game or a passing game and really devaluing the value of running backs. So.
Yeah, and a guy in the passing game that Brian Stevens loves. He drafted him last year in the 2nd round, Demaryius Thomas for the Denver Broncos. That's a guy that may be sitting there around the 12th spot.
I would expect him to be available there at that 12th spot, and I think that'd be a great pick where he's at.
It's going to be interesting to see where Brian Stevens goes with the Chupacabra Terror, especially he just lost a toilet bowl as well. So this is almost like kicking a dog while he's down, losing a toilet bowl, getting the 12th overall pick. But it's going to be interesting to see where he goes there. Now, let's move on to what was the lucky position last year in the 11th spot, where Coach Jordan Dewey built his Super Bowl champion team from. Let's move on to number 11 in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft.
Just one thing, Dick. This isn't a lucky position. This is a position built on hard work and good drafting. So, number 11 can win a Super Bowl here. Let's see where you come out at. Number 11 is the Bill Waddell's Skull Crushers.
All right, interesting for Coach Bill Waddell, who last year got the number 1 overall pick, which is where exactly he wanted, and took Drew Brees. Now, you know, Bill Waddell, as of late especially, has not made his strategy, he's not been shy. Just tell people he wants a top quarterback. He wants to build his team around a Drew Brees, an Aaron Rodgers, a Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady. That's just not going to be an option right here at the 11th position. I mean, those guys will be off the board. Where do you think Bill might be going here now that the elite quarterback class is not going to be an option for the Skull Crushers?
You know, once again, I have to go with I think we're going to be looking at top wide receivers and top tight ends there. You know, number 11 is, you know, there's a good and bad about it. You get that quick turnaround, so you can be thinking about 2 players at one time. But then it leaves you a lot of time to think, a lot of time to make a poor decision as you go through that second round and wait for that first part of that third round. So he's going to have to keep his mind in the game and stay focused for those first few picks. The first round, Crowder will be a gimme. I definitely see the Wittens, the Charleses, the Thomases, even Wes Welker might might not be a bad choice at that position. But it's really that second and third round that I think is going to be key picking in that late position.
That's true. And one thing in this offseason that Bill Waddell, when he's been asked about the draft and his ideal position, he's been consistent with wanting to be in the middle of the round. He said whatever he wanted to do, he did not want to be on either end of the draft in 2014. Well,
I think that speaks to Bill's short attention span. He needs to be able to stay in that action and not let his mind wander. And when you're at either end, you have those long turns between. So Bill's going to have to take his Adderall before he shows up for this draft to be ready for it.
Very true. But even if he forgets, you know, and he's losing his focus, this year, what we forgot to mention, we have a new member in the league. Unfortunately, Coach Joe Frederick, he re-retired, kind of the Brett Favre of the league. Retires, comes back, retires.
I think he'd rather be the Michael Jordan, but unfortunately, he comes back and he doesn't do anything. So I think Brett Favre is probably the more appropriate example.
Probably. But now Bill, since we're on Bill's topic here, his dad, Bob Waddell, has joined the league. And in the first year that Bill ever played in the league, between every single draft pick, Bill went and he asked his father. Now, do you think that's an advantage to have his dad taking over that spot in the league?
I think it's an advantage for Bill because I think the one thing Bill wants to do is to make his daddy proud. And I think having him in the league and having him watching over his shoulder as he makes those picks, I don't think he's going to make those poor picks like an Andre Johnson in the third round or Steve Smith in the fourth round. Hopefully having Papa Bear Waddell watching over his shoulder, he makes some good early picks.
Very true. Very true. Well, let's move on in this draft. Or let's go to the top 10 now that we've seen 11 and 12. Let's see who's picking 10th overall in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft.
Number 10 is going to be JMO's Gridiron Terminators.
Coach Jamison Black, interestingly enough, last year he drafted 12th. Now this year he gets another low pick at 10th. And last year he made history. He drafted the first tight end in the first round that we've ever seen. Now, the commissioner always, pushed the envelope on tight ends before he developed the strategy. Draft a couple of tight ends, but he always would do it second, third round. Last year, Jamison Black pushed it even more and took Jimmy Graham in the first round. This year, he gets to keep tight end Julius Thomas, which is big. Do you think JMO will go ahead and target another top-tier tight end right there to pair with Julius Thomas in the 10th position?
I think that's a distinct possibility. Of all the tight ends we have available to draft, I have 3 going in the first round. So at that 10th position, I think one of those 3, I don't see all 3 going in the top 10, so I definitely see one of those top, a Whitman, a Gronk, or a Jimmy Graham being available in that 10th position. I just want to point out what a great pick he had with that Julius Thomas in those late rounds there. What a great pick that turned out to be, and that's going to be a great keeper and a real boon for this team.
Absolutely. That is an incredible keeper, and so that's to the advantage of pick good late, have gems late, have that attention span late in the draft. So
one thing I'm going to say, though, is JMO's on a bad trend right now, and he needs to turn it around. Looking back in previous history, he had back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. He lost one and won one. And then he dropped down to 5th in his league, 3rd in his league, 4th in his league. We're seeing this downward trend that JMO, if he's this fantasy football king that he thinks he is, not in this league, and he needs to turn things around.
absolutely, and that's why I ask you about, should he go the same thing he did last year? Should he change it up? Should he do something different with the later pick versus, since he already has an elite tight end there?
It might not be a bad decision to take one of those elite wide receivers. I really don't think there's going to be any quarterbacks that's worth taking at that point. So well, now that we've changed the rules and you can start that 2 tight end lineup, I don't think a tight end would be a terrible pick, though.
Very true. Very true. Well, let's move on to the number 9 position in the 2014 draft. Would you do the honors, please, Coach Jordan? Do it.
Number 9. We have Sean Glaze's G.
All right, Sean Glaze in the 9th overall position. Now, last year, just the same as Coach Jamison Black. It's very interesting to look here. Sean picked in the 10th position last year. This year, he's coming to the 9th position. Again, very similar. Now, if you go ahead and roll his draft history here, 2013, he changed things up. He went with Marshawn Lynch, which was against his draft history. I mean, previous years, you looked at quarterback, Drew Brees, Tony Romo, you see Calvin Johnson mixed in there. It's the first time in 7 seasons that Sean Glaze went running back last year. And you know what? He did not find success. It did not translate to wins in the win column. Now, this year he gets to keep Jeremy Maclin. That's a great wide receiver. Where do you think Sean should go this year to change that trend?
I don't know what Sean could do to change that trend. I think he's just a born loser. Look at what he's done this past year. First year in the first season in the league, 2nd place in his division finish. Really respectable for coming in as a rookie. Then he goes 4th, just avoiding. That's when we had a 10-league team, just avoiding the toilet bowl every
single year.
And then last year, 5th, once again, 1 position out of the toilet bowl. So it doesn't matter who he's drafting in that first round. I don't think that's what's causing his failure in this league.
I mean, he's doing just enough to avoid toilet bowl appearances every single season. I mentioned Jeremy Maclin as his keeper. Where is your standing this year, Jordan, doing on a quarterback like Nick Foles? Is he a fluke from last year, or do you expect him to repeat the fantasy numbers that he put up?
I don't want to call Nick Foles a fluke, but I don't think he can put up the same numbers. It was a unique scenario he had last year. Coming in mid-season, he had probably a big chip on his shoulder with everything that was going on with the previous quarterback there, Michael Vick, and all that. And so I think he had a lot to prove. You see that a lot where these guys come in mid-season, can have a great half a year. 16 weeks, that's a long season. And that's a long season as a quarterback, too, taking all those hits and all those guys rushing you all the time. So it's one thing to put together 6, 8, 10 good games. It's another thing to put together a winning 16-game season.
Absolutely. Do you think this is a spot where Sean may jump up in the first round, look at a Nick Foles, or do you think he might hope he falls 2nd, 3rd, 4th round? What do you think he's doing?
You know, I think first round is going to play out pretty straightforward. That 2nd and 3rd round, those are going to be where the key picks are going to come in for him and whether he's going to make it or break it this season. All
right, well, it's time to keep rolling in the 2014 draft order show. Let's move to the 8th position. 8th overall in 2014. Jordan will be
number 8. Jake's strike team.
Jake Tyson and his strike team. Now, Jake Tyson Last season, he drafted in the 4th overall position, and he took Arian Foster, which ended up being a big bust for Jake. Previous years, he went with Lions, he went with Calvin Johnson, he went with Matthew Stafford, as you can see. The year before that, Adrian Peterson. So he's kind of been all over the board, running backs, quarterbacks, throwing a receiver here and there. He did go to a toilet bowl last year. Yes, he played in a difficult division. He had both the Dixons in his division. He had Jameson in his division. He had a very difficult road in his division, and his team actually was probably better than most teams in your division. However, he still did go up here in the toilet bowl. And right now, his projected keeper looks like Colin Kaepernick. That has not been official yet, but that's his projected keeper. Where do you expect Jake, or where would you go if you were running the strike team this year? If they had paid you millions of dollars to come in and said, Jordan Dewing, Super Bowl champion, come in, fix our team, bring us back a Super Bowl championship, where would you be looking to go with this pick at number 8?
You know, I like that question, but I feel like I'm giving away too many of my draft secrets. So I'm going to take a pass on that one and talk about some trends that we're seeing with the strike team. Number 8, you're getting up there. You're going to get some top 10 picks there. Some top 10 overall in the entire the league as far as points go. And you got to make that a smart pick when you're picking that early in the draft. With that being said, what I do like about Jake's team is he does change it up. Sometimes he's drafting a quarterback or a running back or a wide receiver. He's trying to do what it takes to turn his team around. Unfortunately, he's doing nothing. He's going from 3rd place finishes to 4th place to 5th place to toilet bowl appearances. He has a severe, even worse than Jameson Black's trend, is his is even more significant on this downward. So he's trying to switch things up, which I like. You know, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again and thinking that you're going to get different results. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working for him. He's moving a little bit back in the draft this year. Maybe he needs to make that first-round draft pick. The Arian Foster really failed him last year, especially for a top 4 pick, letting people like Rodgers and Manning, even Calvin Johnson pass by him with an Arian Foster pick. So he needs to be smart with this pick at number 8, and there's going to be some quality players there. So he needs to start from the top to the bottom, relook at his draft, and see where he went wrong. Second round, Steven Jackson, Larry Fitzgerald, Jordy Nelson, probably one of the worst first 4 round picks of anyone last year. So he needs to focus on those early rounds and make them quality picks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's finish out the bottom half of this 2014 draft order, picking at number 7. Before we get into the top half, let's see who rounds out the bottom half of the draft order for 2014.
Number 7. We have Midnight Rockers.
Coach Dave Venable and his Midnight Rockers will be at number 7. Again, this will be very, very similar to where he drafted last year. Last year he was in the 8th spot. This year he moves up a spot to the 7th. Now last year he took Calvin Johnson, which ended up being a great pick. LaShawn McCoy in the 2nd round, great pick. Matthew Stafford, 3rd round, very good quarterback. Reggie Bush, 4th round. I mean, he had a solid draft, and he finished last year in 2nd place in a very, very tough division. Now, if you look, though, at his draft history, Calvin Johnson, Maurice Jones-Drew, Adrian Peterson, he had a run on running backs. Now, he changed that trend last year by going Calvin Johnson, but even on top of that trend, there's something that's a little bit more concerning with Dave Venable and his Midnight Rockers. He seems to be an every other year coach. One year, if you look at it, finished 2nd. The year before that, finished 5th. Then finished 2nd, finished 5th. I mean, he's every other year. He'll be really, really good, and then he'll be terrible. How, Jordan Dewing, does he avoid drafting in the same kind of position he had last year? How does he avoid going back into a slumber of sorts and having a terrible season?
You know, I think where Dave Venable's strengths are is evaluating these rookie classes and these undervalued first couple year guys before they really establish themselves in the leagues. He's really willing to take a risk on these young guys that can really have those explosive years. So I think that's why we see this up and down. Sometimes that strategy works really well for him, where these young guys really take off. Other years, you know, that's a tough league, and sometimes it's good just to go with your established players. So maybe if you could ever mold the two by taking some of this young blood and making some good picks of these young guys coming in, and mold it with some of these older guys that have established themselves as big point scorers, I think he can put together a real competitive team.
Absolutely. I mean, and on that has been a problem for Dave Venable. I mean, honestly, his second half of drafts, he's always fallen apart. He always goes and takes a whole bunch of guys that there's people in the room, there's other coaches in the league asking, well, who's that guy? Who does he play for? So, perhaps you're saying scale that back a little bit.
Well, I think he's shooting for the big win, just kind of like you're gambling. It might be 10-1 odds, but when you hit big. And so I think that's what he's looking for in his team. Is he doesn't need to be the Super Bowl champion year after year, but I think when he does put that team together, he wants the big wins all season long.
Very true. Well, we've got the bottom half of the 2014 draft order. Now we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Jordan, we're heading into the top half of the 2014 draft order. A lot of interesting people still out there. Jordan, of course, you're still out there.
Yep.
You have both Dixons that are still out there. You have rookie coach Bob Waddell still in the mix. You got Preston Pace, who had a terrible year last year. I mean, luckily missed the toilet bowl. But you have some interesting people still out and about, so stay tuned so we get into the second half of this 2014 Draft Order Special.
You tired of losing at fantasy football? Do you ever wonder why none of your draft picks work out? Are your players always getting injured? Having trouble keeping up with the opposition? Well, buck up, fantasy football guy. Fantex is here to naturally enhance your ability to play with the pros.
I use Fantex to win a Super Bowl with a losing record.
Fantex is designed to stimulate the football cortex and increase every fantasy player's game. It's easy. Just take one pill before kickoff on game day and watch the magic happen.
Last year, I really thought I had a large enough football cortex. But when it was out in the open, amongst all the others, I discovered it was small and shriveled. This off-season, I've been using Fantex, and I've definitely felt my football cortex swell to maximum size.
Fantex is not for everyone, including those who have apathetic disorders. Side effects of Fantex include carotid stenosis, cerebral edema, anal leakage, narcissistic personality disorder, and hemi-neglect. Fantex has not been approved by the FDA and should be taken once a week with a large beer and plenty of fantasy football research, including but not limited to magazines, websites, and viewing of actual NFL games. Last year's Super Bowl champion, Joe Frederick, learned firsthand what Fantex can do.
2 years ago, my fantasy football career was in the toilet. Fantex really did change my life and put me back on top.
And how his point production increased.
So call now to get your Fantasy football game on and become a champion just like Joe.
Fantex normally costs $60, but if you call now, it's only $19.95, a $40 savings. But wait, we'll throw in an extra bottle of Fantex for free if you call within the next 10 seconds.
You won't regret it. I've got a champion for life because of Fantex.
All right, welcome back to this 2014 Draft Order Special here on FFN. All right, Jordan Dewing, you're still out there in the top 6 picks. Now, are you excited about this news, or are you a little nervous about it?
I'm of two minds. Top 6 pick, that doesn't guarantee you one of those premium quarterbacks. But with the top 6 pick, I don't necessarily need a premium quarterback. I still have a top 10 quarterback on my team as my keeper, Phillip Rivers. So, could I use this top 6 pick to really augment my team with a tight end or a number 1 wide receiver? Or, depending on how early I go in the draft, I could take one of those quarterbacks and use that as trade bait, especially now that the trade rules have really opened up this year.
Yeah, it's one of the things that change. You no longer have to have an equal number of players on each half of the trade, which should help a lot of trades happen in the league. Is that something that you're excited about?
Yeah, especially for me personally. I've always wanted to get some more trades in, but I've just found that the trade process has been a little onerous to deal with. So if I get one of these top tier quarterbacks and I want to make a run with Phillip Rivers again, I could always trade Peyton Manning for like a number 1 wide receiver and a number 1 tight end and really augment my team.
That's very true, and that would really help you go and try to claim a second Super Bowl championship in a row, which would, do I dare say it, start a dynasty? That would be quite the way.
Well, every dynasty starts with your first victory.
This is true. Well, without further ado, let's move on, Jordan Doing, to the number 6 overall position in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft.
Number 6. We have the Lawn Gnome Liberation Front.
Coach Matthew Rubley will be drafting in the 6th position this year in the league. Last year, he had the 3rd overall spot. He went with Tom Brady, the quarterback. Do you think the 6th position will be good for Matt Rubley or not good for Matt Rubley?
I think that's going to be a great position for Matt Rubley. If he's not willing to take Peyton Manning, who should be the number 1 pick in this draft, being there in those early positions, those top 3 positions, will just be a waste for him. In those number 6 positions, you get the benefit of a nice early pick, and then the benefit of that 2nd round, not having to wait until those 22nd, 23rd, 24th picks. So I think 6th position is a great place for him to be in. With that being said, I don't think Matt Rubley's going to be happy with that pick. Do you know why?
Why is that?
Because I don't think he'd be happy with any pick. He just seems to want to complain about no matter where he's at or the rules for this league. So 1st, 3rd, 6th, 12th, I think he'd be unhappy no matter where he's at.
Very true, very true. Do you think he's still going to want to go quarterback? I mean, his first year in the league, he obviously went Tom Brady, so his projected keeper at the time of filming is Emmanuel Sanders, but again, as a Chokeland fan, he has stated he's thinking about not keeping Emmanuel Sanders just for the fact that he's a Denver Bronco. And he's thinking about going and keeping Ben Roethlisberger instead. What do you have to say about that?
For him to be thinking about keeping Big Ben, you know what that tells me? That tells me that he does not want to win this league. I'm sorry. I'm a Big Ben fan. I think he plays with a lot of heart. Unfortunately, that doesn't translate to a lot of points, especially with the way the Steelers are doing these days. So, for him to keep Big Ben, he could pick up Big Ben again in the 12th, 13th, 14th round. Do you think Emmanuel Sanders is going to fall that far in the draft? Absolutely not. The smart choice here is picking up Sanders.
All right. Well, this next position is a very important one, Jordan Doing, in the fact that there have been 4 quarterbacks identified as the elite tier. Now that you're looking at Peyton Manning, you're looking at Drew Brees, you're looking at Aaron Rodgers, and you're looking at Tom Brady. Now, these have been identified as the elite quarterbacks. This league, if you don't have a great signal caller, it's difficult to win. It's not impossible. I mean, look at your team. You had great signal callers last year, but you weren't in the elite tier. Now, this 5th spot, this could be the one person who's on the outside looking in at that elite tier. How big of a reveal is this?
This is probably, besides number 1, this is probably the biggest reveal of this entire draft order show.
I would agree with it, but you know what? The drama's killing me. Let's move on. Let's see who is going to be number 5 in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft.
Number 5. We have the rookie, the Ghost Hunter.
Bob Waddell. Coach Bob Waddell, welcome to the league, by the way, and his Ghost Hunter's gone wild. Now, there's not much on Bob Waddell. Obviously, we don't have a draft history, although we do have a scouting report. If we want to pull that up really quick. His scouting report, he's a Denver Broncos fan. He's been playing in the auction league. It's kind of the minor league for this league for a long time. He's been playing in auction. And in auction, he's had a great tendency to value running backs a lot, quite a bit. And he's always spent most of his budget in the auction league on running backs. So those are the 2 positions he's always done. Now, in the 5th position, now you know what? If there was somebody that was more perfect for this position, it couldn't have been Bob Waddell. I mean, you look at it, if those 4 quarterbacks go off the board in the top 4, guess who falls right into his lap as a running back heavy coach?
Yeah, I think Bob has to be ecstatic with this pick here. Number 5 leaves him in a great position. Pick up Adrian Peterson. I think that's a very distinct possibility that falls in the number 5 spot. great top-tier quarterback, comes back from that injury a couple years ago, has an unbelievable season last year. He also has, Arian Foster and some of those other great quarterbacks there. Probably not your first-round pick, but definitely going to be there when it comes around the turn in that second round. So if anyone is going to be happy about where they're drafting this draft order, it's got to be the rookie.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the stars aligned perfect for Coach Bob Waddell because, even if somebody takes Adrian Peterson before, and he's going to get one of those elite tier quarterbacks. I mean, he knows he's going to get one of the players that he covets the most in this upcoming draft. That's not a better position right there for the Coach Bob Waddell.
Yeah, real lucky for the rookie coming into the season. Now, I had either the luckiest or most unluckiest pick as the number one pick my rookie season. And that's when I did the worst in the league with my 4th place in my division finish, stayed out of the toilet bowl, and I've only improved from there. So with this early pick, but not too early, I think he can do a lot with it.
Absolutely. Is there any quick advice you'd like to give the rookie to the league?
Bob, I think that your son Bill's going to try to get in your head, ask you a lot of questions, say, hey, Pops, what do you think here and there? You got to be able to tune him out and be able to focus on your own draft. You're competing in this league now. You're not supplemental to Bill's team. This is your own team, your own draft. So you got to tell Bill that he needs to sit down and shut up so you can draft your own championship team.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, hey, the 4 people remaining. Both Dixons, Chris and Mike, always dangerous. Always dangerous. No matter where they pick, honestly. Yourself, Jordan. And then, an intriguing bovine intervention. He may get his Aaron Rodgers this year. He's a huge Packer fan. So we're going to have to see how that falls out. So let's move on to the 4th overall draft pick in the 2014 draft coming up.
Number 4. We have Chris Dixon's Kool-Aid Crushers.
Coach Chris Dixon, I would just mention. The both Dixons, they always very, very dangerous.
I did hear you say that, and I would agree with one of the Dixons being dangerous. Chris, he's dangerous, but he's just always at the cusp. Now, last year, he had a real bad run with that really great division he was in. Coming in 3rd, he probably would have been 2nd, or even challenging for 1st if he was in the other division with the weaker division, how they split up there. So, that being said, 3rd, the previous year 2nd, right there on the cusp. Year before that 5th, you can have an offseason, then another 2nd, then another 3rd. So he's always right there, but he really needs to break through after these last 4 or 5 years to be one of those top tier coaches in the league.
This is true, but one of the criticisms of Coach Chris Dixon, and maybe it's the reason he has not broke through since 2002 was his last Super Bowl victory. That's over a decade of losing. Now, stubbornness. That's been the criticism, is stubbornness. Even last year, don't know if we have that footage. I don't know. But the footage from last year's draft party at Kool-Aid Crusher headquarters, where all the fans were there with their signs, they knew that their coach was 2nd on the clock. Now, they were chanting, if we had that footage, they were chanting Peyton Manning's name. The fans of the Crushers were chanting his name. They did not believe,
shocking,
in Robert Griffin III, who was the keeper for the Crushers, and Coach Chris Dixon did not listen to his fans.
Yeah.
He went ahead, drafted Adrian Peterson. Now, great running back that you can't argue, that's not a busted pick, but he went against what the fans wanted. Peyton Manning ended up being the best player in all of fantasy sports. His stubbornness gets him in trouble. How do you...
that's a shocking... Coach Chris Dixon, being a Colorado native, is a huge Broncos fan. And for him to be able to take the leader, the number 1 player, the greatest quarterback of our time, and pass him up in that 2nd position is shocking. He put all of his eggs in one basket with Robert Griffin III. Great kid, young kid, energetic, had a great rookie season. Unfortunately, he put all of his trust after someone that only had the track record of a single season, as opposed to Peyton Manning's history of 16, 17, 18 years in the league. Unfortunately, putting his trust in Robert Griffin and being in that tough division led him to a 3rd place finish. So, with that being said, he's got a lot of experience making these early picks like he has. Adrian Peterson, Jimmy Graham, Michael Vick 2011, probably not a bad choice at the time. But I want to point out that Chris Dixon had the foresight to take Gronk late in the 4th round. He was coming into that with a broken arm that he had last year, missing the first 16 of the season. He didn't care. He was willing to give up those early games to make sure that he had that late season rush, which he did. He had a great second half of the season. Unfortunately, not enough to put him on top.
And actually, you look at every game that Gronkowski was healthy, Coach Chris Dixon didn't lose a single game when he had Gronkowski in that lineup. So to his credit, he did not fear putting a high draft pick on him.
Yeah, he put a great season together, especially that Gronk pick. That was a great foresight.
And, you know, and he'll be in the 4th spot. He's guaranteed an elite tier quarterback if that's the direction he wants to go this year. I'm sure his fans will be chanting it again. And in all honesty, with Preston Fayes still on the clock, I mean, it's interesting because Coach Chris Dixon has always been an Aaron Rodgers lover. Now, this may be a bit of a stroke of bad luck for the franchise of the Crushers because with Preston Fayes still out there, and Fayes is a Green Bay Packer fan, this may be a stroke of bad luck coming towards Chris Dixon.
You know, I think that's okay. He doesn't have any keepers this year, which is a little hard for him, but he'll have to manage and, you know, be actually drafting all the way through in those late rounds, keep his focus on since he's got to draft all the way through 16 players. With that being said, with Coach Fayes probably going to take Aaron Rodgers. I had Aaron Rodgers probably going 5th, so I think this is a good thing for Chris Dixon. I'm going to assume Peyton Manning's going to be gone for this point. So really, he's going to be looking at either Tom Brady or Drew Brees. I don't think you could go wrong with either of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, certainly you could not. Well, before we're going to take one final break.
Okay.
Coach Jordan doing before we get into the top 3. These are big positions here. Coach Jordan doing, Coach Preston Fayes, Coach Mike Dixon. Those are your 3 that are out there. Where they draft is going to be determined right after this.
So what else have you been working on?
Well, I've come up with this idea where you take all the players in the NFL and you write their names down in little books.
Write the names down.
That would be your team, and you would compete against others in what I call fantasy football.
A fantasy football league? Brilliant! Brilliant!
All right, welcome back to this 2014 Fantasy Draft Order special here on FFN. Jordan, are you ecstatic? You are in the top 3. Are you ecstatic?
This is truly unbelievable, having the Super Bowl champion come down to being a top 3 pick for the 3rd year in a row. 2 years ago, Super Bowl champ comes in with the #1 pick, Coach Mike Dixon.
Yep.
Last year, the Super Bowl champion comes in, Coach Bill Waddell with the #1 pick. Here we are looking at making history with me possibly being the #1 pick for the 3rd year in a row as the returning Super Bowl champion. Is that good or is that a curse?
Can you assure the viewers, since you were the head of the conspiracy front the last few years, can you assure them that you aren't a turncoat and you're not just a big part of a huge conspiracy that they reeled you into and said, we'll give you the #1 pick as long as you come to our side of things?
I would have to say that the commissioner and his team have gone through some great lengths to ensure the honesty of this draft pick show. I'm doing the draft. We have these. They are unbelievable. You can't see anything. He's got cards in them. They are mixed up. I've shuffled them so many times. And to be honest, I don't want the #1 pick. So if it comes out that I have the #1 pick, I guarantee you that there is no shenanigans going on with this draft order show.
All right. Well, it is down to the top 3 picks in this year's 2014 Fantasy Football Draft. Well, Jordan, should we see who's drafting number 3 overall?
Number 3. That's going to be myself in the annexation of Puerto Rico.
Jordan doing, well, there goes the conspiracy theories. You guys can all throw them out. And the odds would have been 1, and I think our producers said 1,040 something if it would have been 3 years in a row. So truly would have been history. But at the 3rd point, you just said you did not want the 1st overall draft pick. Now, let's reveal who is going to be drafting in both the top 2 spots. First, at number 2 overall in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft is
Number 2.
Coach Preston Fayes, bovine intervention. Now, this is going to be interesting. Last year, Preston Fayes, obviously, he took Ray Rice. He was coming in. He was scouted by scouts and other in his junior leagues. he was scouted as running back heavy. He did come in first 2 rounds. He went Ray Rice, Trent Richardson. Both of them were massive malfunctions. I mean, complete disasters for picks. Now, Preston Fayes is the 2nd overall spot here. You know what? How do you feel? Because it's pretty much a given. He's going to take probably. I mean, if he's smart, he's going to take a quarterback probably. And it's going to be between Breeze, Rodgers, Brady. What we really have to project out here now for Coach Fayes is how do you think he should construct his draft, being on one of the extreme ends in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, moving forward after he has that key elite piece, the quarterback? How do you suggest he moves forward from there?
You know, I think he's going to take his boy, Aaron Rodgers, who is not a bad pick in that 2nd position. Elite quarterback. He's a gamer. He has all those hands to throw to in his secondary. He puts up big numbers year after year. He's a pretty hardy quarterback. He takes his lumps and keeps on ticking. So if he picks up Aaron Rodgers, he can be happy that he has an elite quarterback. He can also be happy that he can follow a guy that he really loves on the team he loves, the Green Bay Packers. With that being said, he should not, those 2nd, 3rd, 4th, he's going to want to think hookups. Unfortunately for Aaron Rodgers and for the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers is a prolific quarterback that throws to 8, 9, 10, 11 people a game. And unfortunately, he doesn't have anyone on his team that can really pick up those big numbers for him.
And he may be tempted. Honestly, he may be tempted to go with a Jordy Nelson in the 2nd round because he will be there.
He will be
but
there.
Is that a little too high, do you feel, on that wraparound? Because Jordy Nelson may not be there 4th, 5th, but Preston's going to get 2 players pretty quick in the 2nd and the 3rd round. Are either of those 2 picks, supposing he goes Aaron Rodgers, are those worth Jordy Nelson or not?
You know, I've never been a fan of this hookup, picking quarterback and his wide receiver. If they have an off game, you've got 2 of your top players having an off game, and I don't follow in that. Unlike Coach Mike Dixon, that thinks that's a great setup to have. So, with that being said, I think he needs to look at other teams in the league, especially when he has that quick turnaround at 2-3.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and you can open up the last envelope and put it on the screen here. But the first overall pick in the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft will be
Coach Mike Dixon's Titletown Trophy Hunts.
Yep, and it will be the commissioner picking first overall, well-equipped to handle that first pick. And unlike the Waddell last year, and of course Breeze is a great pick, but then after that, he really didn't have any solid picks. His draft fell apart. He couldn't handle being on the end. Is Mike Dixon a guy that you feel will really handle the end of a draft well?
Yeah, Mike stays focused the entire draft time from round 1st to round 16. So I think that's an okay position for him to be in. I'm not a real big fan of that first position. When I drafted there 4 years ago, I came in 4th in my division to extend the overall playoff. So it's a hard position to draft from. With that being said, Mike's going to he's going to start off with a feel-good pick for himself, being a huge Peyton Manning fan. He's going to have him on his team for the 2nd year in a row. Peyton Manning's going to put up a lot of points this year, so Mike's going to be feeling real good. Having a positive attitude and a positive mind speaks wonders for everything in your life, especially with these important draft days.
Absolutely. Well, of course, figuring out the draft order did not only give us exactly where people are picking, it also gave us the divisions. It's always interesting to look at the divisions and how they end up. Now, in 2014, we'll go ahead and we'll put up the AFC Lamar Hunt division here. You can see it on your screen. You're going to have Coach Bill Waddell. He's going to be in there. Coach Sean Glaze is in there. And Dave Venable. Coach Dave Venable's in there. The rookie, Coach Bob Waddell. It's going to be a tough one for Coach Bob Waddell being in there with defending Super Bowl champion Jordan Dewing, as well as perennial contender Coach Mike Dixon. That's going to be a hard division for Coach Bob Waddell.
Especially, he's also going to be up against his son, so we got father and son in the same division. So we'll see some rivalries there, and that's going to be a real tough division to break out of, especially for that rookie Bob Waddell coming in. Dave Venable always puts together, like we said, up and down teams, so he could be a contender there. Bill really needs to turn things around after last year. Sean, after the last 5 years, he needs to put together a tough team if he's going to be competitive. And then Bob, your rookie season, especially in a 12-man league, is always a tough league or tough position to come into.
Very tough position to come into. Now, if you had to project it out, obviously, I'm sure you like yourself. I mean, as the defending Super Bowl champion,
Defending champion, I'm drafting early. I think I'm going to put together a real competitive team this year, as I do every year. I'm going to be a force to beat. So just looking at the names, I'm going to have to go with myself in the first division, Coach Mike Dixon, having Peyton Manning that's going to be putting up 40, 45, 50 points a game. First draft pick. He's going to be real tough. I'm expecting them to go 1-2. That's real unfortunate that the Super Bowl champion and defending Super Bowl champion are in the same division together.
Yeah, from a year ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we could see a early departure depending in the playoffs from one of those two guys that probably don't deserve it.
And let's not short. I know in this show we've given him a little bit of grief out of fun, Coach Bill Waddell, but let's not short him either. 2 years ago, he defeated Coach Mike Dixon in the Super Bowl. 3 years ago, he was in the Super Bowl. So you have in this division, the AFC Lamar Hunt in 2014. The last 3 years, Super Bowl champion are in this division, and honestly, their opponents they played in those Super Bowls the last 3 years were people in the same division, Jordan and Mike and Bill. This has been a combination of those three people in the last 3 Super Bowls. Now, that's going to set up for some great rivalry in 2014.
Yeah, this is going to be a real tough division. With that being said, though, we got the rookie, usually somewhat easier, Sean Glaze, and then Dave Venables. So those two guys can be up and down each year. I think it's a very fair division. Plenty of good matches are going to be had.
Absolutely. Now, let's go ahead and put the NFC Bill Walsh division on the screen. You see Brian Stevens will be in there. He was the Toilet Bowl loser, as well as his Toilet Bowl opponent. Jake Tyson is in that division. Coach Jameson Black is in there, who has not performed well over the past few years. Coach Matt Rubley's in there. Coach Preston Fayes, who also didn't perform well his rookie year. And then what you probably have to figure is the favorite going, and the odds-on favorite, to go look at the Vegas books, to win that division heading into 2014 is probably Coach Chris Dixon.
Yeah, Chris has an early pick, so I think that bodes well for him. He is going to be the man to beat. That being said, besides having all these Super Bowl champions in the other division, I think we're going to have a real tough team. We got Chris. We have the second-year player, Matt Rubley. He put together a great team last year in his rookie league.
Very competitive.
J-Mo has lots of success in his other leagues. Not so much in this league, but I think he has a chance to put together a good team. So we have those another 3 top-tier guys. Then we got Brian, we got Jake, and we got Preston. They got to turn things around, especially from last year. For Preston and Jake and Brian from previous years in addition to last year. Preston, man, started out hot, 4-0. Probably due to his weaker division he was in last year, although the Super Bowl champion myself came out of that weaker division. Preston let things get to his head, and I think he went 4-11 or 4-9, whatever the games came out to be, and didn't win a single game after that hot start. So
True, but maybe this is the year that Preston or Jake or Brian busts through and goes to a Super Bowl. If you're, I just keep going back to it. If you're Coach Chris Dixon, you got to be licking your chops. He has not, since probably his Super Bowl run when he won in 2002, he probably has not been the favorite to win his division in over a decade. He's gonna be the clear-cut guy going in there. We'll see if he listens to his fans going into the draft.
Yep. Number 4 pick. He's the man to beat.
He is. Well, Jordan, this has been great. This has been a good time here on the 2014 Fantasy Football Draft Order Special. I thank you for being here in FF9 Studios to handle this, to get this going, and to kick off the 2014 Fantasy Football season. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. I look forward to talking with you again in this position next year.
All right. Well, until next time, folks, keep it together and stay classy.